Most parents believe the greatest risk in raising a child is making a mistake, saying the wrong thing, not doing enough, missing some critical window. But that is not the real danger. The real danger is far quieter. It is doing everything right. Buying the products that everyone recommends. Following advice that sounds logical and reassuring. Trusting tools that promise safety, intelligence, and faster development. And slowly, invisibly, without alarms or warnings, those same tools begin shaping how a child moves, how their brain wires itself, and how they relate to the world. Not because parents are careless, not because they do not love their children deeply, but because no one explains what these products actually do beneath the surface. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What if some of the most popular baby products in America are not helping children develop, but quietly training them to rely on external systems instead of their own bodies, their own curiosity, and their own ability to self-regulate? What if the shortcuts designed to make parenting easier today are quietly borrowing from your child's future resilience, focus, and independence? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will not feel guilty. You will not feel defensive. But you will see your child's environment differently. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is not about perfection. It is about awareness. And awareness is leverage. Let us start with something that feels harmless, even helpful. A product that has been in American homes for decades. Something often passed down, gifted, or stored away, just in case. Baby walkers. At first glance, they seem brilliant. Your baby can move. You get a few hands-free minutes. Everyone feels relieved. Except the data tells a very different story. Multiple controlled studies comparing infants who used baby walkers with those who did not found the same result again and again. Babies who used walkers learned to walk later, often 3 to 4 weeks later. They also scored lower on developmental assessments months afterward. But the timing itself is not the real problem. The real issue is what walkers teach the nervous system. Natural walking develops through instability. Babies wobble. They fall. They adjust. They recalibrate. Every near fall is information. Every recovery strengthens neural pathways in the cerebellum, the region responsible for balance, coordination, and predictive movement. But a walker removes instability entirely. No balance required. No core engagement. No problem solving. Instead of learning how to shift weight through the hips and stabilize their center of gravity, babies learn to push off their toes and glide. It looks like movement, but neurologically, it is something else entirely, and the brain records it. Now layer in safety. Walkers give babies mobility before they have judgment. Suddenly an 8-month-old can reach stairs, hot surfaces, courts, and table edges at speed. This is why the American Academy of Pediatrics did not issue a warning. They called for complete ban. Not regulation, not redesign. A ban. And yet walkers are still sold, still gifted, still marketed as developmental tools. Because they solve a short-term problem for parents, hands-free time, while creating a long-term cost for children. So what actually helps? The least marketable answer possible. Time on the floor, Struggle. Holding your child's hands while they take uneven steps. Push toys that move slowly and require effort. Letting development happen when the body is ready, not when a product allows it. This brings us to the next category. Early sit-up devices. Bumbo seats. Molded chairs that prop babies into upright positions before they can get there themselves. They look supportive. They look safe. They look like they're helping babies practice sitting. But sitting is not a skill you practice. It is a milestone that emerges. It develops from the inside out. Babies build the ability to sit by strengthening deep core muscles through rolling, pushing up during tummy time, and transitioning through side-sitting. When we prop babies into upright positions before they can reach them independently, we bypass that entire process. We place load on a spine that is not yet stabilized. We remove the need for muscular engagement. The body adapts to what it is asked to do, and when it is not asked to stabilize itself, it does not. The result is rarely dramatic failure. It is subtle delay, poor trunk endurance, less efficient movement patterns, earlier fatigue. Parents rarely notice this in the moment because the baby looks fine, until months later when coordination feels off or milestones feel harder than expected. The solution is simple but emotionally difficult. Let babies struggle on the floor. Let them wobble. Let them tip over. Instability is the workout, and the body will rise to meet it. Now, everything we have discussed so far affects physical development, but the next category reaches deeper. It reshapes how the brain learns to pay attention, process language, and engage socially. Screens, educational videos, baby apps. This is where emotions spike. So let us stay grounded in evidence. For children under 2, screens do not teach language. They delay it. Even when the content is labeled educational, even when it is interactive, even when babies appear focused. Because attention is not learning. Screens capture attention through novelty, bright colors, rapid cuts, constant stimulation. But learning requires interaction. Babies learn language through contingency. They make a sound, you respond, they adjust. That back and forth builds neural circuitry. A screen cannot respond to your child's specific sounds in real time. It cannot read facial expressions. It cannot adjust pacing based on confusion or curiosity. There is another effect most parents never hear about. High-intensity stimulation recalibrates expectations. Real life begins to feel slow, quieter, less engaging, which makes it harder for babies to stay engaged in the exact environment where learning actually happens. Human interaction. This does not mean screens are toxic. It means they have opportunity cost. Every minute in front of a screen is a minute not spent in responsive interaction. And that difference compounds. A caregiver narrating their actions, responding to gestures, making eye contact, builds not just vocabulary, but emotional intelligence and social timing. If you need a break, and you do, a safe play space with simple toys does far more for development than a screen ever could. Even frustration is productive. It trains attention. Which leads us to toys, specifically Toys that light up, sing, talk, and perform. They feel engaging, but engagement is not agency. When a toy does everything, the child becomes an audience. The toy decides. The toy performs. The child watches. Compare that to blocks, a cardboard box, a wooden spoon, and a pot. Now the child invents. They decide. They problem solve. That is executive function. That is creativity. That is the foundation of learning. Children often choose these simple objects when given the option, not because they are boring, but because they require participation. Now let us talk about something more serious. Something that is not just developmentally concerning, but potentially dangerous. Infant sleep positioners and cushioned sleep pods. They are marketed as safer, as more comfortable, as solutions to reflux and poor sleep. Medical organizations are unequivocal. Babies should sleep on a firm, flat surface with nothing else in the crib. No cushions, no pods, no positioners. Soft surfaces restrict movement and increase suffocation risk. But there is also a developmental cost. On firm surfaces, babies move during sleep. They turn their heads, shift weight, strengthen muscles. Cushioned environments restrict this. They reduce sensory input. They create monotony where exploration should exist. A bare crib may look uncomfortable to adults, but it is exactly what a developing nervous system needs. Now consider motion devices, swings, rockers, vibrating seats. They work. That is the problem. They replace attunement. When parents soothe babies manually, both sides learn. Parents learn cues. Babies learn regulation. Mechanical soothing removes that feedback loop. Babies adapt. They become dependent on external motion. Human soothing is irregular. Breathing changes. Movement varies. That variability teaches self-regulation. Machines do not. Used briefly, these devices are fine. Used as primary soothing tools, they create reliance. The alternative requires more effort up front. Presence, consistency, routine. But it builds something permanent. Now there is one last category. It is sitting in your diaper bag. Food pouches. They are convenient, clean, efficient. And when they become the primary feeding method, they quietly erase essential learning. Eating is not just nutrition. It is motor development, sensory exploration, confidence building. Grasping food builds fine motor skills. Chewing strengthens oral muscles for speech. Mess teaches cause and effect. Pouches bypass all of it. Food becomes passive, uniform, effortless, and effort is how skill forms. Mess is not failure. It is data. And here is the larger pattern. Every product we discussed is recent. For most of human history, none of them existed. Children still developed. So why do we believe we need them now? Because convenience sells, and the baby industry is very good at selling certainty in an uncertain process. The cost is subtle, invisible, until suddenly milestones feel harder, confidence feels shakier, and parents wonder, what went wrong? Nothing went wrong. The system optimized for ease instead of growth. So here is the question that changes everything. Is this product doing something my child should be learning to do themselves? Ask that question consistently, and everything shifts. There is a belief, deeply embedded in modern American culture, that progress should be visible. If something is working, you should be able to see results quickly. If effort is being applied, outcomes should follow. If improvement is happening, it should be measurable. This mindset works in some domains. It fails spectacularly in human development. Because the most important changes inside a child are not immediately visible. You cannot see neural pruning as it happens. You cannot watch executive function strengthening in real time. You cannot measure emotional regulation while it is forming. And when progress is invisible, doubt moves in. Parents begin to question whether they are doing enough, whether they should intervene more, whether something needs to be added, upgraded, optimized. This is where many well-intentioned choices quietly derail development. Because growth does not come from removing friction. It comes from learning how to move through it. This principle is obvious in every other high-performance domain. In finance, returns come from volatility. In fitness, strength comes from resistance. In business, adaptability comes from constraint. Yet with children, we try to engineer environments where resistance is minimized. We smooth every edge. We remove every delay. We outsource every challenge. And children adapt accordingly. They become excellent at consuming solutions, less skilled at generating them. This is not a moral failing. It is a predictable outcome of the environment. When effort is no longer required, the nervous system stops investing in capacity. Which brings us to attention. Attention is not a personality trait. It is a trained capacity. And it is shaped early. When children grow up in environments saturated with constant stimulation, their brains adapt. They expect rapid feedback. They expect novelty. They expect engagement without effort. The result is not distraction. It is recalibration. The brain simply learns what normal feels like. And when normal becomes slower, quieter, less intense, attention feels expensive. This is why so many parents hear the same phrase later on. He's so smart, but he can't focus. The intelligence was never the issue. The training environment was. Sustained attention is built during moments when nothing special is happening. When a child stacks blocks repeatedly. When they stare out a window. When they struggle to figure something out without immediate reward. Those moments are not empty. They are foundational. But they only work if they are allowed to exist. When boredom is immediately eliminated, imagination never develops the muscle to fill the gap. Now consider emotional regulation. This is one of the most misunderstood areas of child development. Regulation is not taught through explanation. It is learned through experience. Specifically, through cycles of dysregulation followed by support. A baby cries, a caregiver responds. The nervous system calms. Over time, the child internalizes that process. Eventually, they begin to self-regulate. But when soothing is consistently outsourced to devices, something changes. The regulation still happens, but the learning does not. The child learns that calm arrives from the outside, not from within. This distinction matters later in life, because stress does not disappear. Deadlines, conflict, failure, loss. Children who learned regulation through connection can tolerate stress without panic. Children who learned regulation through substitution seek relief externally, and external relief does not scale. Now let us talk about independence, because this is where many parents get confused. Independence is often framed as a child needing less comfort, less reassurance, less support. In reality, independence is a child trusting themselves. And self-trust does not come from being pushed away. It comes from being supported while trying hard things. Children explore most confidently when they feel secure. This is called a secure base. A caregiver who is available, predictable, and emotionally attuned. Ironically, attempts to force independence early often produce the opposite result: anxious attachment, avoidance, over-reliance on external systems. True independence emerges naturally when dependence is met consistently. This is why many products designed to encourage independence quietly undermine it. They reduce reliance on people before reliance has been safely established. Now, zoom out further. Because this is not just about childhood. It is about the kind of adults children become. The world your child will grow into will not reward compliance. It will reward adaptability. It will not reward memorization. It will reward problem solving. It will not reward constant stimulation. It will reward focus. Those capacities are not taught later. They are built early, quietly, through thousands of small moments that seem insignificant at the time. Now let us address something that almost every parent feels, but rarely admits: exhaustion. Modern parenting is cognitively exhausting. The volume of advice is overwhelming. The expectations are contradictory. The margin for error feels non-existent. In that state, convenience feels like relief, and relief feels necessary. This is where compassion matters. Because the goal is not to remove all convenience. The goal is to understand its cost. Some convenience is neutral. Some is helpful. Some replaces learning. Awareness allows choice. Without awareness, convenience becomes default, and defaults shape outcomes. The baby industry thrives on uncertainty. It offers certainty where none exists. This product will make your baby smarter. This tool will help them sleep better. This device will accelerate development. And when those promises fail, parents internalize the failure. They assume they did something wrong. Instead of questioning the promise, this erodes parental intuition. Parents stop trusting observation. They defer to packaging and reviews. But no product knows your child. And no product can replace attuned presence. The most valuable data source is not online. It is in front of you. Your child's cues, their rhythms, their responses. When parents reconnect with that, anxiety decreases, confidence increases, and children feel it. Because children are exquisitely sensitive to emotional tone. A calm, observant caregiver creates a calmer nervous system in the child. This effect is stronger than any tool. Now imagine your child years from now, not as a baby, but as a teenager or an adult. The traits that will matter most will not be early milestones. They will be Can they tolerate frustration? Can they focus without constant stimulation? Can they regulate emotion under stress? Can they engage deeply with people and ideas? Those traits are being shaped now. Not dramatically, but consistently. Through environment, through expectation, through what is allowed to be hard. So here is the reframe that changes everything. Instead of asking, "Is this making my life easier right now?" ask, "What skill is this replacing?" Sometimes replacement is fine. Sometimes it is not. But that question turns passive consumption into intentional parenting. And intentional parenting is not about control. It is about design. You are not meant to perform development for your child. You are meant to design an environment where development can happen. Remove danger, not challenge. Provide support, not substitution. Allow struggle, not neglect. You do not need more products. You need fewer barriers between your child and effort, between your child and you. Let them move. Let them struggle. Let them get bored. Let them get messy. And let them see you present when it matters. Because what children remember is not the product. It is the relationship. There is a moment in every long-term process where nothing seems to be happening. No visible progress. No clear feedback. No reassurance that the effort is paying off. In investing, this is where most people quit. In business, this is where shortcuts start to look attractive. In parenting, this is where interference quietly begins. Because waiting feels irresponsible. Doing nothing feels risky. And yet, in human development, waiting is often the work. The most valuable systems grow slowly. They require repetition, consistency, patience. And patience has become one of the rarest resources in modern life. We live in a culture that rewards immediacy, fast answers, instant solutions, measurable outcomes. But children are not projects. They are processes. And processes cannot be rushed without cost. This is where many parents unknowingly trade long-term capacity for short-term calm. A quiet baby feels like success. A distracted toddler feels manageable. A child who needs less feels independent. But silence is not always regulation. Compliance is not confidence. And independence is not the absence of need. True regulation looks like flexibility, the ability to move between states, to feel frustration without panic, to experience boredom without distress, to encounter difficulty without collapse. Those skills are not taught through control. They are learned through supported exposure. A child becomes resilient not because life was easy, but because difficulty was survivable. And survivable because someone was there. This is why presence matters more than performance. Children do not need parents who constantly entertain, instruct, or optimize. They need parents who can tolerate discomfort without rushing to erase it. Because when adults rush to remove discomfort, children learn something powerful. They learn that discomfort is dangerous. And what feels dangerous must be avoided. Avoidance becomes a habit, and habits become personality. Now consider the broader implications. A child who avoids discomfort avoids effort. A child who avoids effort avoids growth. A child who avoids growth becomes fragile. Fragility does not mean weakness. It means low tolerance. Low tolerance for uncertainty. Low tolerance for frustration. Low tolerance for delay. And the modern world is full of all three. This is why resilience has become such a sought-after trait, and also why it cannot be manufactured later. Resilience is not built through motivational speeches. It is built through lived experience, through falling and getting back up, through trying and failing, through being supported, not rescued. Now let us talk about confidence, because confidence is often misunderstood as praise, as encouragement, as reassurance. But real confidence comes from competence, from evidence, from experience. A child becomes confident not because they were told they could do something, but because they did it, even imperfectly, especially imperfectly. Products that do things for children remove opportunities for competence. They replace doing with watching, soothing with dependency, exploration with consumption. And while the child may appear calm, something essential is missing. The internal signal that says, "I can handle this." That signal is not innate. It is earned. Now let us return to the idea of environment. Because environment is the silent teacher. Children adapt not to what parents say, but to what exists around them. If an environment constantly responds to distress with distraction, children learn distraction. If an environment responds to boredom with stimulation, children learn to expect stimulation. If an environment removes every obstacle, children learn that obstacles should not exist. But if an environment allows challenge while maintaining safety and connection, children learn capability. This is not about toughness. It is about trust. Trust in the child's nervous system. Trust in development. Trust that growth does not require constant intervention. Now let us address something important. This approach does not mean ignoring your child. It does not mean withholding comfort. It does not mean forcing struggle. It means distinguishing between support and substitution. Support stays with the child. Substitution replaces the child. One builds capacity, the other builds dependence. And dependence is not inherently bad, but premature dependence on systems that cannot respond relationally has consequences. Humans regulate best in relationship, not through objects, not through automation. Relationship is the original regulation system, and it still works. Now imagine your child as an adult, not hypothetically, viscerally. Imagine how they respond to stress, to uncertainty, to challenge. Do they shut down? Do they escape? Do they engage? Those patterns begin now, in ordinary moments, in how discomfort is handled, in how boredom is treated, in how frustration is framed. This is where parenting becomes less about childhood and more about adulthood. Because childhood is preparation, not for school, for life. And life is not optimized. It is unpredictable, messy, uncertain. Children who grow up with constant optimization struggle when optimization disappears, because the real world does not adapt to them. They must adapt to it. Now let us talk about parental fear. Fear is understandable. The stakes feel high, and they are. But fear distorts judgment. Fear pushes toward control, toward over-intervention, toward constant correction. But development does not accelerate under pressure. It contracts. Children sense anxiety. They absorb it. An anxious environment creates anxious nervous systems. A calm, observant environment creates capacity. This is why slowing down matters. Not because speed is bad, but because growth requires integration. Moments of effort followed by rest. Challenge followed by connection. This rhythm cannot be automated. It must be lived. Now, before we move toward the end, it is important to say this clearly. If you recognize yourself in this conversation, that is not a failure. It is awareness. And awareness changes trajectories. Brains are plastic. Patterns are adaptable. It is never too late to shift direction. Every time you choose presence over convenience, you are investing. Every time you allow your child to try instead of stepping in immediately, you are compounding. Every time you tolerate discomfort without rushing to erase it, you are building resilience. These are not dramatic acts. They are quiet ones. And quiet actions often have the greatest impact. So here is the deeper truth behind everything we have discussed. Parenting is not about doing more. It is about interfering less. Not neglect, not absence, but restraint. Knowing when to step back. Knowing when to trust the process. Knowing that slow does not mean broken. It means building. And building takes time. There is a quiet moment that comes when you finally stop trying to win at parenting. When you stop chasing milestones. When you stop comparing environments. When you stop measuring success by how little your child needs you. And in that moment, something surprising happens. Everything becomes simpler, not easier, but clearer. Because childhood was never meant to be efficient. It was meant to be formative. Much of the pressure parents feel today does not come from children themselves. It comes from fear. Fear of falling behind. Fear of missing something essential. Fear of being judged. And fear has a way of disguising itself as responsibility. But responsibility does not mean constant intervention. Responsibility means stewardship. Designing an environment that protects without suffocating. That supports without replacing. That allows effort instead of eliminating it. Children do not need parents who get everything right. They need parents who are real. Parents who notice. Parents who listen. Parents who stay. Development does not ask for perfection. It asks for consistency, for rhythms that repeat, for connection that returns, for challenge that is survivable. When you strip parenting down to its essentials, very little remains. Time, space, attention. A child on the floor discovering their body. A child at the table exploring food with their hands. A child in quiet play inventing meaning from nothing. These moments do not look impressive. They do not photograph well. They do not sell products, but they build humans. Humans who can tolerate frustration. Humans who can focus without constant stimulation. Humans who can regulate emotion under pressure. And here is the part that often goes unnoticed. When you stop outsourcing development to products, you slow down too. You become less reactive, less anxious, more present. Parenting becomes less about control and more about relationship. And relationship is where growth actually happens. Not only for children, for adults as well. Now, before we close, take a moment. If this video has shifted how you think about parenting, development, or the role of convenience, subscribe to this channel. Not for algorithms, but because these conversations are rare and they matter. And if there is one person in your life, a partner, a friend, a sibling, someone who genuinely wants a better relationship with their child, share this video with them. Not to criticize, not to correct, but to support. Because parenting was never meant to be done alone. And clarity is something we can give each other. Now let us bring this home. The goal is not to raise perfect children. There is no such thing. The goal is to raise capable humans. Humans who trust themselves. Humans who can engage with difficulty instead of escaping it. Humans who can sit with uncertainty without collapsing. And that work begins in the most ordinary moments. On the floor, at the table, in silence, in connection, without devices doing the work for them. Without products replacing presence. You do not need to be extraordinary. You need to be attentive. You do not need better tools. You need better trust. Trust in your child's body. Trust in development. Trust in the slow process that looks messy from the outside, but builds strength underneath. Let development unfold. It has been doing this far longer than any industry, and it still knows exactly what it is doing.